Skidmore, Missouri, a small, quiet town where life moves slowly. But in December 2004, horrific crime would shock this peaceful community and grab national headlines. A young, expectant mother was brutally murdered, her baby stolen from her womb. This is the chilling story of the murder of Bobbie Jo Stinnett and the search for her stolen child. Bobbie Jo Stinnett was a 23-year-old woman full of life. Born and raised in Skidmore, Missouri, she was known for her love of animals, particularly her passion for breeding rat terriers, a hobby she shared with her husband, Zeb Stinnett. In late 2004, Bobbie Jo was 8 months pregnant with her first child. She and Zeb were eagerly awaiting the birth of their baby girl, who they had already named Victoria Jo. But Bobbie Jo's joy and anticipation would soon turn into a nightmare. On December 16, 2004, Bobbie Jo was at home, expecting a visit from a woman she met through an online dog breeding forum. The woman, known as Darlene Fisher, had expressed interest in purchasing a rat terrier from Bobbie Jo. But there was no Darlene Fisher. Instead, the woman who knocked on Bobbie Jo's door that day was Lisa Montgomery, troubled and desperate individual. Lisa Montgomery had traveled nearly 170 miles from her home in Melbourne, Kansas, to meet Bobbie Jo. Under the guise of buying a dog, she had a much darker motive. Lisa was there to steal Bobbie Jo's unborn baby, an unspeakable plan that would soon unfold in the most violent way possible. Later that afternoon, Bobbie Jo's mother, Becky Harper, arrived at her daughter's home and made a horrifying discovery. Bobbie Jo was lying unconscious in a pool of blood, her abdomen brutally slashed. Desperate, Becky called 911. Becky screamed, "She's 8 months pregnant." Becky screamed to the operator as she desperately tried to save her daughter.
Nottoway County 911, what is your emergency? What's wrong?
Tragically, it was too late. Bobbie Jo Stinnett was already dead. But there was another shocking detail: her baby was missing. Bobbie Jo had been strangled to death, and in a grisly act, her killer had cut the baby from her womb. It was a crime so brutal and disturbing, it shocked not only the small town of Skidmore, but the entire nation.
North of the metro, almost to Iowa, barely a stop on a winding country road, you'll find Skidmore, Missouri. Like the trucks that pass through this dying town on their way to someplace else, most folks grow up and move away. But Bobbie Jo Stinnett wasn't allowed to make that choice. She was taken from Skidmore, leaving behind her husband Zeb and her daughter Victoria Jo.
I said, I sure hope that nothing bad happened. And he said, well, it has. It's a homicide.
It's the case that shocked her pastor, Harold Hammond. Folks around the metro and across the country. 2 families and 2 towns brought together by one deplorable act. Now, almost 1 year later, the real story behind the lives of Bobbie Jo Stinnett and Lisa Montgomery.
She's kind of tomboy. She liked horses and stuff.
Gene Day is Bobbie Jo's grandfather, a man of few words but lots of memories of the little girl who looked up to him as a father figure.
What do you remember about that day when she got married?
I walked her down the aisle.
You did? Oh, that had to be a big honor for you.
Yeah.
Bobbie Jo loved animals. She bred rat terriers. Today, 2 remain at her grandparents'. Police say it was Bobbie Jo's love of dogs that connected her to Lisa Montgomery, living a quiet country life in Melbourne, Kansas, 175 miles away.
Oh, I remember the little old-fashioned girl that she was, that she portrayed herself to be.
Kay Salisbury knew a side of Lisa from the crafting talents they shared, and Lisa, like Bobbie Jo Stinnett, also loved dogs. In fact, they're pictured here together after meeting briefly at a dog show. Bobbie Jo and her husband Zeb on the right, Lisa second from the left. Some say this is how Lisa knew Bobbie Jo was pregnant.
The folks here in Melbourne say Lisa Montgomery was a newcomer to them. She'd only been here a couple of years and pretty much kept to herself. Until one day she showed up in town showing off her new baby, popping in and out of stores all over Main Street.
But soon the truth would be obvious. Lisa fooled everyone, including her own husband.
And Kevin was just such a proud papa. Boy, he had a smile on his face from ear to ear, and he just was so happy. You couldn't have got him out of the clouds for another month.
Forget a month, Kevin's happiness didn't even last 2 days.
That was a precious baby.
The baby, whom Lisa named Abigail, wasn't Kevin's. She wasn't Lisa's. She was the tiny life cut too soon from Bobbie Jo Stinnett's butchered body.
It was just a traumatic thing.
On that day, last December, Bobbie Jo's neighbor, Reverend Hammond, unknowingly sat about 100 yards away from the crime scene.
And I looked out the window then, and it was parked over. In fact, there was a sheriff's car, 2 or 3 cars, an ambulance, and I just figured, well, that Bobbie Jo was having her baby.
The last time anyone spoke to Bobbie Jo alive, a woman named Darlene was coming to buy one of her dogs. Police say Darlene was really Lisa Montgomery.
Did you know any of this was going on? I'm not going.
Within a day, the story of 2 mothers now included 2 grieving husbands.
Families are mighty precious to me, and I hope they are to him. He's got Zeb and Victoria Jo got a rough road to go.
Nearly a year later, Skidmore is still a quiet town. Bobbie Jo's family clings to her memory, and folks say Zeb's moved on.
Zeb is doing good, and he's adapted. He's a wonderful father.
But in Melbourne,
My heartstrings just are broken for Lisa's children.
Desiree Bowman is Lisa Montgomery's oldest daughter.
Does time make it easier?
Yeah, you just kind of learn to move on, and just there's speed bumps in life, and you just gotta go over them.
But there are still so many questions. For Bobbie Jo's grandpa, will the pain ever go away?
You know, I still see people come down the street and think it's her.
Do you really?
Yeah.
And for Lisa's friend, what turned a Midwestern mom into an accused murderer?
It's so hard for me to think about this and think about Lisa doing something like that, because you can't be bad forever and raise children like she did.
With Bobbie Jo dead and her baby stolen, authorities feared the worst. Would the child survive outside the womb? Could they find the baby in time? A national Amber Alert was issued, and law enforcement agencies across multiple states were mobilized to find the missing infant. The investigation quickly turned to the online dog breeding community, where Bobbie Jo had met the mysterious Darlene Fisher. Investigators soon discovered that Darlene didn't exist. It was an alias used by Lisa Montgomery. Armed with this new information, police raced to track her down.
Yeah, back on December 16th of 2004, the small town of Skidmore, Missouri, that's about an hour and 45 minutes northwest of Kansas City, was really in a state of shock. 23-year-old Bobbie Jo Stinnett, who was 8 months pregnant at the time, was found in her home with her stomach cut open.
We believe this to be a murder, and she was pregnant, and the baby's missing. There's no baby in her.
Randy Strong, now the sheriff of Nottoway County, Missouri, was the detective assigned to the case.
The dispatch was that the victim's mother said she was pregnant, but it looked like her stomach exploded.
Bobbie Jo's killer, Lisa Montgomery, had posed as someone else online in order to gain access to a pregnant woman. In Montgomery's case, that was posing as a potential customer for Bobbie Jo's dog breeding business. Lisa Montgomery took the child she cut from Bobbie Jo's womb to Malvern, Kansas, making it a federal kidnapping case. That child survived.
Less than 24 hours after the murder, on December 17, 2004, authorities arrived at Lisa Montgomery's home in Malvern, Kansas. Inside, they found Montgomery with a newborn baby girl, Bobbie Jo's daughter, miraculously alive. But who was Lisa Montgomery, and why did she commit such an unspeakable crime? Born in 1968, Montgomery had a troubled childhood marked by abuse and instability. As an adult, she struggled with mental health issues, including depression and delusional behavior. Montgomery had faked several pregnancies over the years, even convincing her friends and family that she was expecting a child in 2004. Desperate to maintain her lie, she concocted a chilling plan to steal Bobbie Jo's baby and raise the child as her own. In 2007, Montgomery's trial began. The defense argued that she was mentally ill and suffered from severe delusions, but the prosecution painted her as a manipulative and calculating murderer. After days of emotional testimony, the jury found Lisa Montgomery guilty, and she was sentenced to death.
A shocking story out of Skidmore, Missouri.
A family member found the 23-year-old woman. Investigators say someone murdered that mother and took her unborn child.
The talk at Gary's Bar and Grill on this night centered on the house just south of town, Lisa Montgomery's home. Police descended on this rural location.
Apparently, Lisa Montgomery told her family, "I've delivered the baby, quote, come pick me up."
So she doesn't work here anymore because she had a baby?
Supposedly. You know, I had hoped that we had a live baby and we needed to focus on that.
An infant girl was brought to Stormont Vale Hospital.
I asked the sheriff whether or not this is indeed the baby. He said, yes, it appears to be.
The baby is here tonight, we are told, remarkably doing well.
The execution of Lisa Montgomery. We are live outside the federal penitentiary in Terre Haute, Indiana. In less than 24 hours, Lisa Montgomery will be executed for murder and kidnapping. This was a brutal crime, something many of us will never forget. It is something that KCTV5 has now been covering for more than a decade. We have a lot of information to share with you tonight, and we begin with what happened 16 years ago.
This is a part of all of us that we'll never forget. It'll always haunt us.
Bobbie Jo Stinnett was butchered in this house.
Her and Zeb's bedroom was here in the front, and then the next room was where the murder took place. I can't imagine.
Choked with a rope.
She was strangled more than once.
The baby was cut from her stomach, and Bobbie Jo slowly bled out.
It left me angry that somebody would come in and do this to another human.
The house where Bobbie Jo lived is destroyed. In many ways, so is Skidmore, and almost everyone connected to this case.
I've seen the other side of her. She's a monster. There's no redeeming quality there.
Lisa Montgomery's lawyers argue she's mentally ill, has brain trauma, and has suffered sexual abuse and torture all of her life. Her life should be spared. What are your thoughts on that?
It needs to proceed. She meticulously planned this for days, if not months. It affected all the investigators that were involved.
Sheriff Randy Strong was an investigator with the Major Case Squad back in 2004.
We were angry.
He tracked leads to Melbourne, Kansas, and says he found the most hideous sham.
She stood up and she fake walked like a woman had just given birth, like it was painful for her.
Turns out Lisa Montgomery was never pregnant. She was a killer who fed those around her a pack of lies. Investigators, and even her husband. There was no birth. It was murder and kidnapping.
Lisa stepped in behind her with a garrote, wrapped it around her hands, and reached down and went over her head with it and strangled her.
Sheriff Strong unpacked brutal details for those feeling sorry for the killer. Montgomery researched how to perform a C-section. She made a dry run to Skidmore the day before the murder. Montgomery brought umbilical cord clamps, a rope, and a knife to the Skidmore house. He believes Montgomery knew right from wrong the day she was caught, and points out Bobbie Jo fought for her life.
She was grabbing the knife. She had Lisa Montgomery's hair in her hands.
Sheriff Strong is haunted by Bobbie Jo's feet. Blood was on the soles. The medical examiner explained Bobbie Jo was alive when the baby was cut from her stomach. She moved her legs and feet.
I have no sympathy for Lisa Montgomery for what she did. That was the most monstrous act I can think of.
Bobbie Jo Stinnett's family has asked for privacy since the beginning, and we certainly are honoring that request. The baby in question recently celebrated her 16th birthday, which of course is the anniversary of her mother's death. She now lives with her father, but they no longer live in Skidmore, Missouri. It is unclear if they will be here for the execution. They certainly have that right as family members. Now, Lisa Montgomery has a lot of supporters, a lot of visible supporters. They are saying she should not face the death penalty because she has lived a life full of torture.
I am heartbroken over this. I'm telling you all, I'm heartbroken.
Meet Diane Mattingly. She's Lisa Montgomery's sister.
She should have never been put on death row.
Diane and other advocates say Lisa Montgomery was brutally tortured throughout her life, beaten, raped, and neglected.
Lisa was broken. She was completely broken from all of it. So when I look at everything that they say about her, you can see it step by step where they broke her down.
Diane swears it's true. She survived it before being removed from the home at 8 years old.
Do you believe there was sexual abuse?
I was raped in that home. So yes.
Court exhibits now feature Lisa's childhood moments, marking her passage of times. This is the age she first remembers being sexually assaulted. It was in a cornfield. She'd grow up being beaten and raped by her stepfather and his friends, according to court documents, then trafficked by her own mother.
My heart goes out to the family that lost their daughter, that lost their mother, that lost their wife.
She understands Lisa should never be free, but she also can't understand the justice in her sister's death. KCTV5 reviewed numerous doctors' notes and legal exhibits as part of our investigation. Here's what those reveal. Montgomery has been diagnosed with bipolar, anxiety, PTSD, borderline personality disorder, and psychosis. Doctors suspect traumatic brain injuries from car crashes and rapes. Testimony in old court documents back up claims of rape, torture, and neglect for almost all of her life. In some ways, prison has been a blessing. Montgomery is no longer abused and has mental health treatment and medication.
I'm wanting President Trump to understand that she is broken. She's mental illness. She has been sexually abused her whole life. Please commute this to life. That's what I'm asking as a sister. I'm begging you as a sister to commute it to life.
Lisa Montgomery has that clemency petition before President Trump. Recently, her attorneys have argued that this execution must be stopped because she has lost touch with reality, and that makes it unconstitutional.
The murder of Bobbie Jo Stinnett left a lasting impact on her family and the town of Skidmore. Bobbie Jo's parents, Becky and Ron Harper, were left devastated by the loss of their daughter but found solace in the survival of their granddaughter, Victoria Jo. Victoria Jo was raised by her father, Zeb, and today, she is a healthy and happy teenager. Though she never met her mother, Victoria's life is a testament to the strength and resilience of those who survived the tragedy. After years of legal battles and appeals, Lisa Montgomery's death sentence was carried out on January 13, 2021. She became the first woman to be executed by the U.S. federal government in nearly 70 years. Despite her attorney's arguments that she was mentally ill and should not face execution, her fate was sealed.
After a more than 7-hour delay due to court appeals, Lisa Montgomery died by lethal injection here at the federal prison in Terre Haute at 1:31 a.m. She did not issue a final statement. A senior official with the Bureau of Prisons then read the charges that Lisa was convicted of. A gentleman with the U.S. Marshal's Office picked up a black phone that is in the room. He called the Justice Command Center just to make sure that there were no final stays in this this execution, no pardons, no appeals in process that would prevent the execution from happening. Once that did take place, then the execution began. Lisa's left hand did twitch slightly. She moved it slightly. Also, her chest heaved a few times, but the whole execution process just took about 15 minutes. The families of the victim did not want to speak to the media, nor did they issue a statement. Again, Lisa Montgomery put to death here at the federal prison in Terre Haute at 1:31 a.m. Reporting from Terre Haute with local news that matters, I'm Dana Winkleplack.
While nothing can erase the pain of losing Bobbie Jo, her memory lives on through her daughter and the community that continues to honor her life.